Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video, we'll be trying to cram everything into one video because of the tight turnaround, and we'll be going through my team selection ahead of Game Week 15, and we'll also be doing a bit of a Game Week preview video as well, answering some of your questions and dilemmas ahead of the Saturday deadline. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment and subscribe. I think 10,000 subscribers is probably unrealistic now, but we are still pushing to try and hit 10,000 subscribers before the start of 2022. So please do subscribe if you're new to the channel. Midway through this video, there's also going to be a giveaway, so do stick around for the giveaway because I want the opportunity to try and give back to you guys as well. Without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So guys, OneFootball will continue to sponsor the videos on this channel for the foreseeable future, but from now on they'll be the official sponsor of the team selection videos only on this channel, which is perfectly fitting because they really do aid with the team selection videos with respect to potential injury news, transfer news, press conference updates, stats, home and away, the yellow card suspension thing that we did a few weeks ago as well. That was completely used off the OneFootball app as well. So if you would like to download the OneFootball app and get all of the things that I've just mentioned, plus like in-game notifications, live ticker, lineup news, all of that, you can scan the QR code in the top left corner of the screen, or you can click the link in the description. It is completely free. It's a fantastic app, and it also helps to support the channel so very much. If you do download OneFootball, of course, let me know down in the comments what you think of it. So we did bounce back in Game Week 14 with a small green arrow after a relatively big red arrow in Game Week 13 due to the Burnley Spurs game being called off and me having no one from the bench. The Spurs boys actually saved me a little bit this week. It did look like it could have potentially been even better because a lot of the key players blanked on Tuesday and Wednesday that I didn't own, the likes of Antonio, Gallagher, etc. And it looked like if some of the Spurs boys and Brentford boys really turned up, it could have been a huge green arrow. As it stands, though, it was a small one. Emerson and Son were the two that really pulled through. And I'm quite happy about that because my only three differentials this week were Emerson, Son, and Mbeumo. So for two of those to return is absolutely brilliant. And Emerson Royale in particular, because I've been getting a lot of stick for picking him. And I know Reguilon outscored him and he got 12 points. But I'm still delighted that Emerson Royale got the 80 points because a lot of people were suggesting that I should take him out for Alonso. Obviously, Alonso didn't do particularly well. Some even suggest him for a hit. So I think it shows that my patient style is working for the time being at least. And we will discuss that later in the video with some of the Game Week preview questions because I think that patient style is doing me quite well this season. And it won't work every week. And some weeks it doesn't. Like, for example, last week, I could have taken out Saka for Jota last week. Jota got the brace, and I wish I'd have made that sort of more aggressive move. So it doesn't always work, but in this case, hanging on to the triple Spurs has done me all right this week. I got, 18 points from the three of them, which is pretty decent. Outside of that, Salah's obviously amazing, and all Salah is doing at the moment is just boosting the game week average because most people captain him. I know a few of you went a little bit differential and you were punished this week, and that sucks because we're trying to add enjoyment to the game. And to be honest, if I owned Alonso, I would have been very tempted to captain him, and I don't really blame people for trying to give the armband to someone like Kane to try and add that enjoyment and variety to the game. But at the moment, if you go anywhere else other than Salah, you're just getting massively punished. And it sucks because I don't think you should be punished for making maverick decisions in this game and trying to increase the enjoyment. But for the time being, it might just be sensible to leave the armband on him. And then Jota was the other one that did really well for me, which is great because my transfer was Saka to Jota, as you guys know. And the other transfer that I made, other than Saka to Jota, was Norman to Gilmour. That was just to make my bench a little bit stronger this week. Gilmour actually had a pretty good game against Newcastle. He's on all corners pretty much and all set pieces for Norwich. So he looked really lively. He was almost playing in a number 10 role at points. He did drop back into sort of that pivot role as well. He played at the number 8 at points as well. But a lot of his time was spent in and around the edge of the box. So I was really impressed with Gilmour. And I think he might be, at the moment, the best 4.5 million midfielder to own. So in general, the team didn't do that well, to be honest. Other than Emerson Royale and Son, if those two didn't do very well for me, I would have been looking at another big red arrow. But as it stands, they pulled through. Pretty good game week score of 69, small green arrow up to 40k. I really do want to push on to the top 10k over the Christmas period. There's going to be so many game weeks coming thick and fast, and I think this is my opportunity. I've only got one free transfer this week. It seems like for the last 4 or 5 weeks, I keep on rolling a transfer, and I've had 2 free transfers most week. This week, I only have 1, so it's do I use that transfer or do I roll? Let's take a look at my team selection ahead of Game Week 15. So guys, you can see I did a little bit of Christmassy decorations to the graphics. I did these last night at like 1 a.m. trying to sort out all this stuff. With the quick turnaround, it's going to be absolutely manic over the next month or two. So I might try and make some slightly better Christmassy graphics over the upcoming period, but just thought I'd spice it up a bit and get us all in the festive mood as well. So Game week 15 team selection. I've got one free transfer, 0.2 million in the bank. My team value is going up very nicely. It's not particularly high, but considering I never make early transfers and I don't even look at my team value half the time, I am pretty happy with it. And it will mean that when the second wildcard comes around, that I'll be in a pretty good place to get in a lot of the high-priced players. I'm really, really happy with the defense at the moment, but I will probably be looking to potentially change it up soon. Obviously, James is flagged. I forgot to add the flag here. So I don't know what Tuchel... this is recorded, obviously, before the Tuchel press conference. Tuchel will be speaking today. I can't remember what time it is. If James is out long-term, I might still be tempted to just play Livramento this week against Brighton and then reassess afterwards. But it's a tricky one because if he is out long term, he's going to start to fall in price, and I could just potentially get in like a Diaz against Watford. And I do think it's a tricky one because I do think I still want to cover the Chelsea defence, but I just look at the upcoming period of fixtures for Manchester City, and I just think if James is out, I would be very tempted by getting Diaz in or even potentially Kyle Walker and having that double Manchester City defence because the fixtures are so good. They're still the best defence in the league. And not many people will own the City double up. And I think a lot of people will just go from James to Alonso. And that might be the sensible decision. But Alonso really didn't look very good. And City are really good and the fixtures are a lot better. Whereas Chelsea's fixtures do start to really, really toughen up. And I do wonder how many games Alonso will play over this busy period. I think he'll play like 80-85%. I just wonder whether it might be a smart, slightly more differential to play to go for a double up on the City defence. So I'll assess that as and when I know about James's injury. If he's only out for this week, or potentially we're not sure and it's a bit touch and go for this week and next week, I might just put Livramento in this week and then I'd have 2 free transfers next week to potentially deal with that. I could then either downgrade or go to Diaz after that. Outside of that, Cancelo looks great, but I do think that I've been saying this every video. You guys probably think I'm absolutely mad. I do think Cancelo is going to be rested sooner rather than later. This looks like a fixture to do it, and he could easily play like Walker and Ake at fullback or Walker and Zinchenko. There are lots of different things he could do, and the fact that Walker was rested in game week 14 does make me think that Cancelo could be seeing his rest against Watford. I say that all the time though, and he has commented on the fact that Cancelo's fitness is amazing. So we'll have to wait and see. I've got Livramento on the bench, but that obviously won't be able to... I can't cover James and Cancelo through Livramento. So then I'd be going Gilmore deep against Tottenham, which isn't really ideal. So like I said, if there is an inkling that James is out for 3 or 4 weeks, which will probably be like 5 or 6 game weeks, then obviously that will be me moving him on. And at the moment, I'm thinking Diaz might be a good option, or potentially Kyle Walker. Trent is obviously going to stay for the foreseeable future. He's up to £8 million now, but he is worth every single penny of that. And then Emerson Royale, which is great now that I feel a little bit better holding him after getting... He got the 8 points, which was great. Clean sheet and 2 bonus points I forgot to add, which is brilliant considering no attacking returns. Son got a goal, and he didn't even get close to Emerson Royale's bonus points. That's really, really impressive, which shows that his baseline bonus is probably quite good. And the Norwich fixture, despite Norwich looking a little bit better recently and Pukki starting to pick up his form, I still really like that fixture for him. So I think the back line looks really, really good. Got no real complaints at the moment. I'd like to keep James because I think I'd want him long term. But if he's out for a long enough period, I'll probably look to moving him on. Otherwise, Livramento will be coming in for James this week. Let's move on to the midfield. So, guys, the midfield doesn't really require much talking about. I will probably be giving the armband to Salah. I did really want to give it to Son or Kane, but neither of them showed me quite enough to go against Salah. And just seeing what happened to those that went against Salah this week with him just scoring a brace, it doesn't matter who he's playing against at the moment. And I think that's a mixture of Salah being amazing, but probably even more so, Liverpool are just outrageous. They are just so good in attack. They absolutely smothered Everton. And yes, Everton aren't a great team, but Salah scored against Chelsea, Man City, demolished Manchester United. It really doesn't matter. And yes, Wolves are quite a good defence, but I don't think it's worth looking at the fixture at the moment. And I'm not saying I'm going to perma-captain Salah all season. I might even captain someone else in the lead up to AFCON. But I do think that when AFCON comes around and that time of year might be the time to start looking elsewhere. And like I said, if someone else pops up that starts to look great, Ronaldo scores braces like 6 games in a row, I will consider other players. But for the time being, I don't see enough outside of Salah. And I tweeted about it. I'll try and remember to flash it on screen. I might forget. I do think that a lot of players every single week will outscore Salah. As we see every single week, Trent outscored Salah for 3 weeks. But it's probably not worth the risk of trying to predict which player will outscore Salah, because every week Salah's getting a return apart from 1 week in game week 2 when he got 3 points. Every single week other than that, he's got a return. 7 of the 14 game weeks, he's had double-digit returns as well. So players will outscore him every week, but how much do you want to risk trying to identify which of those players it is? If you're choosing a defender, they could so easily lose their clean sheet, as we saw with Trent and Cancelo last week. If you're choosing an attacker, are you confident enough that they're going to outscore Salah? Not for me. And if you get it wrong, you're just punished so heavily due to the ownership. So I don't like to use ownership when making my decisions, but I do think that it means, due to such high ownership, that you do need to be very confident in the player that you're backing against Salah with. Unless you just want to enjoy the game and captain someone else and you don't really care about rank, then that's absolutely fine as well. But for me, for the time being, I think I'm just going to keep the armband on Salah. That could change for this weekend, but I highly doubt it. Obviously got Jota against Wolves as well, which I'm really glad about. He does look very, very good at the moment. He looked very, very up for it against Everton. He could have had a couple of assists as well if the players that he'd passed to, had finished their chances. Son looks much, much, much better in game week 14. Looked a lot livelier. Probably looks slightly better than Kane with respect to goal threat, although Kane did look good from an assist perspective. But I am happy to hold my triple Spurs for the Norwich game. We'll discuss that in the game week preview video because there's lots of questions around Spurs. I'm perfectly happy to be holding them for the Norwich game. And Mbeumo is the biggest issue in my team. I want him gone as soon as possible. But at that price, with very little money in the bank, I don't really see that many great alternatives. And Brentford do have Leeds and then Watford. So whilst I'm not really very confident about Brentford, I'm definitely not confident about Mbeumo. He looks completely lost. He can't even get into the goal-scoring opportunities at the moment. I still am relatively happy holding him probably for the next 2 weeks, potentially just for this week. But like I said, I think I'd rather roll my transfer and maybe get him up to like a Bernardo Silva or a Gundogan or a Foden, or maybe downgrade and then upgrade elsewhere. I'd rather use 2 free transfers rather than bringing someone in at that price that I don't really want. That's the midfield. Obviously, then I brought in Gilmore as well, who could be featuring this week, but hopefully not because he's got Spurs. Let's move on to the 2 strikers. So just to finish off with these absolute jokers up front for me that can't seem to hit a barn door, Kane and Tony. I'll be very, very soon shifting both of these guys out my team. Kane, I'll probably be giving 1 more week, and we will discuss that in a little bit more detail at the end of the video in the Q&A section. But I just don't think it's a wise decision to take him out before Norwich at home. Norwich have looked a little bit better recently, but I think if I've held him for 3 of the good fixtures, I hold him for the 4th and final one, and I use 2 free transfers to decide what I want to do next week. That also gives me another week to assess, is Lukaku fit, and if so, how good does he look? Is Ronaldo going to continue that run of form, or was it a one-off game? Do I want to downgrade to the likes of a Bamford and Antonio, or sort of a mid-price striker? Do I want to go all the way down to King and potentially getting like a Bruno or Mane in midfield? Like, what do I want to do with my team? It will give me another week and another free transfer to decide on that. And I still think that Kane could do fairly well against Norwich, despite the fact that he's looked more like a defensive midfielder than a striker. Tony's in a similar boat to Mbeumo, but I do think that Tony looks a little bit better at the moment, and I also think Tony is on penalties. So if I'm going to keep one of the Brentford boys, it will likely be Tony, but I do think that in general, I just want to completely switch up my front 3. Gelhardt was brought in just as a temporary thing to allow me to get in Jota and Son and Kane and Salah and all these expensive players. But long term, I think I want 3 playing strikers, and I think it will be something like King, Antonio, and then a Lukaku or a Ronaldo. I think that will be along the lines of what I'm going for. Josh King in particular is definitely on my radar, and it will probably be for Gelhardt so that I've got 3 playing strikers and that my bench is a little bit stronger over the upcoming period. But I'm going to wait a week to do that. The reason for that is I think next week I'll be taking both Son and Kane out, or at least one of them. That will give me funds to then distribute around, strengthen the bench. And I think it's quite likely that I'll definitely be using my 2 free transfers next week, and probably a -4, because that will allow me to take 3 transfers. I'll probably take out Kane, Son, for something like maybe like a Ronaldo, a Sancho, or a Lukaku, a Sancho, and then I can upgrade one of the bench spots as well. And it allows me to restructure my team, strengthen my bench, and I'll be in a really good position from game week 16 onwards. So all of that being said, what I'm leaning towards is rolling the transfer. I don't think I need to make a transfer here. Obviously, if James is out long term, it might be that I just decide this week James to Diaz. Even if James is out long term, though, I'm not sure that I'll definitely make a transfer. I could just bring in Livramento, and then I could do the same again next week, reassess. Do I want to bring in a City defender? Do I want to do X, Y, Z instead? Because I don't mind playing Livramento this week. So that's the team. Let me know down below if you think I should be making a transfer. I'm pretty happy with the team. I don't see any issues. In fact, I actually think the team looks brilliant, which normally means it's going to be a pretty poor game week for me. It always seems to be the way. So we're now going to move on to the game week preview section of the video, answer some of your questions, take a look at some different comparisons between players, and then yeah, it's going to be a long one, guys. So as I said at the start of the video, I will be doing some giveaways throughout the month of December, and I suppose this is a little bit of a win-win for everyone. It's a win for you guys. Hopefully you see it as a win because you have the opportunity to win a copy of my book, The Mind Game, Gaining a Psychological Edge in Fantasy Premier League. However, it also obviously allows me to plug my book a little bit. So hopefully you guys don't mind, but I will be giving away some free copies of the Mind Game. So every single video, I'll be giving away one copy to someone that comments down below something. So this week, the challenge is to correctly guess how many points my team will score in game week 15. So comment down below how many points you think my team from the previous section, so you can scroll back now and have a look at it, how many points you think they'll score. And just as a tiebreaker, in case there are like hundreds of people get it correct, although I don't think that will be the case, just comment who you think will be the highest scoring player in my team as well. So something like, you can see as an example, 54 points, Mohamed Salah. After the game week's done, I will go through the comments and I'll pick out the winner, and I will be sending you a copy of the Mind Game. It can be anywhere in the world. It's not just in the UK, so comment no matter where you are. However, please also consider buying a copy before Christmas as well. You can add the Mind Game to your Christmas wish list for your family. You always get those questions. Is there anything cheap I can get you? Is there anything I can put in as like a stocking filler? It's only £8.99 and it is free post and packaging in the UK. So it's free delivery in the UK. So it is just the sole price of £8.99. And for international delivery, it is very cheap as well. So feel free to enter the giveaway, but also feel free to ask for it for Christmas. And if you have any friends or family that also play Fantasy Premier League, it's a nice cheap present that will be very interesting for them. It basically discusses all of the different psychological elements of FPL. So if you enjoy my Psychology 101 videos, or you've just got a bit of an interest in your decision making inside FPL and outside of FPL, do order a copy of the Mind Game. The links will be in the description below. You can also get it on ebook and Kindle as well. So if you don't want a hard copy and you instead just want the digital version, you can do that and it's even cheaper. But definitely enter the giveaway. I'm interested to see. Hopefully a few of you are saying like 70 and 80 points rather than a few of you saying like 30 points. But yeah, definitely enter the giveaway. Hopefully you guys can win the copy. Don't say I don't do anything for you guys and for this channel and don't put in the work. I did manage to create some game week preview graphics last night. I stayed up a little bit later. I made graphics for the first two, the main two questions that I was asked a lot on Twitter. I just put out a post at like 11 p.m. last night and just said, give me some questions and some discussion points. Pretty much everyone asked me two questions, and there were a few others as well. So I've created graphics for the two main questions, and then the rest of the questions I'll just answer at the end of the video, more like a Q&A, sort of almost like a live stream format, where I just answer based on my gut feeling and my immediate response to that. So one of the key questions is Emmanuel Dennis or Joshua King. A lot of people are interested in these Watford strikers, and rightly so. They're both really, really cheap, putting up incredible numbers. Watford looks significantly better under Ranieri, and the fixtures are pretty good coming up as well. So I don't see any reason not to go for one of these guys. And I'll be honest, I'll almost definitely be bringing in one of these two as my third striker moving forward. They're perfect to either keep on the bench, rotate into your team, maybe like you rotate them with like a Saka or a Smith Rowe or like a Livramento. You can rotate them really nicely, or you could just start them every week as well. However, which of the two is the better option? I don't think this is clear cut, by the way. You will see that I've got an opinion on which one is better, but I don't think it's you definitely have to go for that one. The first thing to note is that the pricing is different. Emmanuel Dennis is £0.3 million cheaper, and that does matter. I suppose it depends what you want the striker for. If you want your striker to be starting every single week, I do like King just because he's on penalties. And as we'll discuss in a minute, his stats are slightly better. So I think if you're looking for someone that you want as a dead starter each week, I do like King. Also, we don't know at the moment. There's a lot of conflicting reports. Dennis hasn't been playing for the Nigerian national team due to falling out with a coach back in like 2019 or 2020. But there are some reports that he might be going to AFCON. With Joshua King, you don't have that issue as much. But King has picked up injuries in the past. So I suppose there's pros and cons for either. But I do think that King will be nailed for the foreseeable future. The fact that he's on penalties would probably mean that if you're looking for a starter, I would start to lean towards King. Whereas if you're just looking for someone to sit on the bench every week or rotate very occasionally into your team, you might as well go for Dennis because he's a little bit cheaper. You can use the funds in your starting 11. So that's an immediate thing to take note of. The fixtures for both obviously are great. Man City's not ideal this week. So if you're bringing them in this week, just make sure that you either start them against City, which, listen, Dennis scored against Chelsea, so they could do something this week against City. But just be willing to potentially bench them this week. And then after that, though, Brentford, Burnley, Palace, Wolves, West Ham, the fixtures are pretty good moving forward. And like I said, you're not bringing these in to score you 10, 12 points every week. And if you are, you'll probably be disappointed because I doubt they'll continue that rate of return. With respect to the underlying statistics, Joshua King does come out on top on every single underlying statistic, apart from minutes played. But both of them have been fairly nailed since they've come into the team. Projected points-wise, the fixed algorithm does prefer King. That's probably a mixture of penalties and also the fact these underlying stats are slightly better. Expected FPL points-wise, they are very similar. 5.13 for Dennis, 5.49 for Joshua King. I've said it before, expected FPL points tend to be a lot higher for defenders and for midfielders due to defenders getting the extra points for clean sheets and extra points for goals. Midfielders getting extra points for goals and extra clean sheets. So 5.49 and 5.13 is highly impressive for expected FPL points per 90 for strikers. It's better than a lot. It's better than the likes of even like a Son or a Kane as well. Where it starts to become quite clear the difference between the two is when we come to expected goal involvement. And what I've done here is I've deliberately chosen non-penalty expected goal involvement, because when you put penalties into it, it goes even higher for Joshua King because he did have the penalty as well. But this is non-penalty, so taking penalties out of the equation. Joshua King's non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 is 0.71, whereas Dennis's is 0.51. Now, I would say that a 0.51 expected goal involvement for a £5.4 million forward in Dennis is highly, highly impressive. So I don't want to take anything away from Dennis there, but King's at 0.71 is elite. That is ridiculously good for a £5.7 million forward. And that isn't skewed by recent fixtures or recent results. It has been consistently good now for 6 to 7 game weeks. So I'm taking keen note of King. And the fact that he's only 5.2% owned shows that people are paying more attention to how many returns they've actually got already. And Dennis is obviously getting more returns as of late, but I do think that Joshua King will start to catch him up soon. So I think at the moment, Dennis is obviously above Joshua King. I think we might start to see this happen soon. And I think if I was moving for someone this week as a result, it would probably be Joshua King. Moving down to big chances, this is quite a stark contrast as well. 0.27 big chances per 90 for Dennis, 0.99 per 90 for Joshua King. So Joshua King is getting a big chance every 90 minutes, which is massive. They're the sort of chances that you're more likely to score. And then touches in the box, both of them pretty good. 5.35 for Joshua King, 5.07 for Dennis. And the touch maps, for that reason, are very, very good as well. What I would say is Dennis tends to play a little bit wider, so even his touches in the box tend to be a little bit wider than Josh King's, whereas a lot of Josh King's touches are central or slightly to the left. But all of those touches in the box you can see are in that central spot there. So I do still think that Joshua King is the one to own for me. But it does largely depend what you want. If you can't afford Joshua King, or you just aren't sure between the two and you want to go for slightly cheaper Dennis, I don't mind that at all. I think both are great options. I do potentially think it would be a little bit crazy, but if you're just looking to play like a 5-4-1 or a 4-5-1, you could even have both. There's such great value, and you do need to look in isolation. I've spoken about double ups and triple ups in the past with diversification bias, which is our natural tendency to avoid putting all of our eggs in one basket. These underlying numbers would suggest that it isn't a terrible idea to have both. If you're going to bench one most weeks and play the other, it's not terrible. But the only issue you have then is when they have difficult fixtures, like City this week, it becomes an issue because you don't want to play either then. So like I said, I'd lean towards Joshua King. Dennis's stats are improving though, and they are very, very good. And he's managing to get returns no matter what. Both are great options. Let me know down below. You team Dennis or you team Josh King? The second main question was which Man City midfielder to pick. I'll be honest, as always with the Manchester City midfielders and attackers, I don't really have a great answer for this. There are so many pros to having them. There are so many cons to having them. And there are pros and cons for each player. What I'm going to do is I'll just have a little bit of a chat through the pros and cons for each player. And I'll allow you to come to the decision you want based on that. Because like I said, none of them come without issues. And they all have strengths as well. If we start with Foden, obviously this is largely dependent on his fitness. But he looks like he's back fit now. I think Foden is probably still just about my favourite, just about. I think that before he obviously got his injury, he was nailed. He was playing 90 minutes almost every game in a row. And I'm not saying that will continue over the busy period. But obviously Champions League is going to die down now. So that the focus will be on the Premier League. And he's young. Before his injury, he was a fairly fit player that doesn't pick up many injuries. Pep has commented before on his ability to recover as well. He can play on the left, he can play as an 8, he can play as a false 9. His versatility and his importance that Manchester City side cannot be understated. And I think when a player gets injured, we almost forget about what happened before that. And he was starting game after game after game in really big games as well. So I do still think that Foden is fairly nailed in that team. It's just whether he can start to find his feet again following that injury. His stats are very, very good as well. 5.52 expected FPL points per 90. His non-penalty expected goals and expected assists per 90 is 0.62, which again, highly impressive. And as you can see, is by far and away the best on the list. 4 touches in the box per 90 at 6.46. Getting involved in the action, really, really good underlying stats. I do still think he's fairly nailed. I do think he's a great option. That being said, I don't think he's the most nailed player on this list. And this is where we then come to Bernardo Silva. And as you can see straight away, Bernardo Silva has played 1,119 minutes this season for City. He's played almost every minute available for Manchester City. And as you can see, he's also got the highest projected points on this list for the Fantasy Football Fix algorithm at 26.6. And the reason for that is that expected minutes are king at the moment. And over the busy period, I am starting to wonder, is the deal with City midfielders and Pep Guardiola just getting a player that plays every minute. Because in that attack, with the amount of goals they score and the stats that they put up and the talent that they all have, if you play every minute, you will likely get onto the score sheet quite a few times. And that's what Bernardo Silva is doing. His underlying stats here aren't that amazing, but he's playing every minute, and that means he will get chances. It's really important to note here, I am looking at statistics per 90. Foden, Bernardo Silva and Gundogan won't play 90 minutes every week. Specifically, Gundogan and Foden, I assume, will play slightly less minutes than Bernardo. So you do have to take that into account. When you take into account how many minutes they play, these stats might be different, right? Bernardo Silva's stats might look better than Foden's and Gundogan when you take into account expected minutes. So I do wonder whether Bernardo Silva might be the play, because you know, at least based on the first 14 game weeks, that he is definitely in Pep's starting 11. And he hasn't looked at any point like he's lacking fitness or struggling to recover. It's a tough one. Again, Bernardo Silva's stats aren't bad by any means, but they are the worst of these three players here. So you're picking a player with slightly lower underlying statistics because you're expecting them to get slightly more minutes. It's a really tricky one, but I am starting to wonder, as I said, whether at the moment the play with Manchester City attackers is just nailing the player that you think is going to start the most games. The third and final one is Gundogan, and I think Gundogan is similar to Foden for me in that I do think he's probably in Pep's favoured starting 11. And he's got really, really good underlying stats, the best on the list here for expected goal involvement. But I think Gundogan of the three will probably play the least minutes. I just think that with Bernardo Silva playing so well in the 8, with Grealish coming back, with KDB coming back as well, I do think that Gundogan will see slightly reduced minutes. However, I do still think that it will play the majority. I think you'll see 80-85% from Gundogan. There are a lot of statistics to suggest that Gundogan is significantly less effective when KDB is in the team, though. There have been some great threads on Twitter from just showing that his goal threat is significantly lower with KDB in the team. KDB's obviously coming back now, so I wonder if that's going to halt Gundogan's goal threat slightly. That being said, even when KDB's in the team, he's still got fantastic underlying data. The only one thing that does worry me about Gundogan is that his touch in the box is very, very low. So he makes fantastic late runs, but he does rely on making those runs and getting into the box at the right time to score. Whereas the likes of Foden is getting so many more touches in and around the box that I do wonder whether over the Christmas period it will get slightly more opportunities to score. It is a really, really tricky one. Just to summarise, Gundogan has the best underlying statistics here. So if you're trusting the data, I really do like Gundogan. I think Bernardo Silva will get the most expected. He's got the highest expected minutes. He'll get the most minutes over the busy period. And I think Foden's maybe a combination of the two. Pretty good underlying stats. Probably plays second most minutes here. And therefore, I think just for a combination of both, I would just about lean to Foden. That means that he is more expensive than Bernardo Silva. And I just think that maybe, just for peace of mind, you go for Bernardo Silva and you know that he's going to start the majority of the minutes. I don't own any of these guys. I don't own any Manchester City midfielders, but I am potentially looking at bringing them in. If I don't bring in Sancho next week for Son, I would potentially bring in a Manchester City midfielder instead. Let me know down below, do you own any of these three? If not, who are you looking to bring in? Grealish is also an option, but I do think that if you're going to bring in a Man City midfielder, you choose one of these three, in my personal opinion. So in this final section, we're just going to do some other questions asked. This is going to be more gut feeling, without graphics, without stats, just what I think in response to this. I haven't got anything in front of me. I haven't scripted these questions. So just my personal opinion on it, a bit like a live stream format. The first question is what to do with Brentford and the Spurs assets. Obviously, you know, if you watch the team selection part of the video, I have 5 assets from Spurs and Brentford. So I'm going to be holding Brentford for 2 more weeks. My Tony and Mbeumo probably for 2 more weeks. And I'll probably be holding Spurs for 1 more week. I just think that if you've held them this long, you give them the rest of the nice fixtures they have. And my main issue isn't necessarily that I don't want to sell them ahead of Norwich and then Leeds and Watford for Spurs and Brentford respectively. It's more so that I just don't see any other options that I'm that desperate to get in this week for either of them. For Spurs, Son has looked significantly better this week, and I'm not necessarily sure I'd want to jump on Sancho straight away, as we'll discuss in question 3. Maybe if you want Jota in, you might want to do that, but Son looked a little bit better, so I'd probably hold him. Emerson Royale and Reguilon looked pretty decent enough, and they were getting in some good positions, so I wouldn't want to sell those. And with Kane, as we'll discuss in question 5, I'm not desperate to sell him for anyone else, really. All of the other strikers, I'd probably want to give another week to reassess. So Spurs boys, I don't really want to take out. And then Mbeumo and Tony, at their price points, unless you've got money in the bank or you want to take a hit or use several transfers, I don't see any other options as well. For example, people took out Tony for Benteke last week, which looked like a decent transfer, but then Benteke was rotated. You could take out Mbeumo for some other mid-price or budget midfielders, but there just aren't that many at that price point that I'm really desperate to get. especially for this upcoming week. So for me, I'll be holding Brentford players for 2 more weeks and Spurs players for 1 more week. So if you're asking my opinion, that's what I would do. But I am a fairly patient, hit-averse, risk-averse manager. So I'm fairly happy holding them for the nice couple of fixtures they've got left and then deciding to move them on. If you are looking to take them out, I do think Mbeumo is probably the most popular player. He looks terrible at the moment. He's not even getting the opportunities to hit the post anymore. He kept hitting the post earlier on in the season. He's not even taking shots. He's not getting in those goal-scoring opportunities. So I do think if I was taking out one of those Spurs and Brentford players, it would be Mbeumo. If I was, who would I be looking to replace him with? I think if you're doing it this week and you're looking for a player that can play this week, it would probably be Smith Rowe. His underlying stats aren't that amazing, but he just continues to score. And sometimes you just have to look at the positions that a player is getting in. He's confident. He's taking shots from outside the box that are scoring. He makes those really, really great late runs and scores from sort of the edge of the box. So the XG is not going to be that great for him, but he's showing that he's doing it on a consistent basis. So confidence is high. He's playing a lot of minutes for a team that are looking better under Arsenal. So I'd probably say Smith Rowe. Outside of that, my favourite 2 options are probably Bowen and Fornals. I do think that I want to be jumping on one of those West Ham midfielders. I know Bowen missed out against Manchester City, but I think that was likely just a shift in formation as opposed to him being rotated. And the thing I like about Bowen is that when Antonio is rested, and it will happen at some point over the busy period, when he's resting one of the midweek games, I think Bowen's likely the one that will fill in up top as striker. So I do really like Bowen. His underlying stats are better than Fornals, but Fornals is definitely going under the radar. Takes a lot of set pieces, especially corners. Likes to take a pot from outside the box. His underlying stats are very good as well. So I like Bowen and Fornals as potential replacements for Mbeumo as well. The reason, again, that I'm rolling the transfer and I'm not taking him out this week is Mbeumo has Leeds and Watford, and I just want to assess, does Fornals continue to look good? Does Bowen continue to put up good underlying stats? Does Smith Rowe's underlying stats continue to look mediocre, or do they increase? And if so, how does that affect his output? So I'm going to give it a little bit longer. But if you are looking to take Mbeumo out, I'd probably be looking at one of Smith Rowe, Bowen, or Fornals, in my opinion. Question 3 is it too early for Sancho? It's a tough one. I advocate sometimes moving before you see evidence, and we've seen a little bit of something from Sancho. So it might be the time to just bite the bullet, take an early leap with them. But I did that with Spurs and it didn't turn out that great. I took the leap of faith with Son and Kane before we saw anything, and that sort of punished me a little bit. So it depends on what sort of manager you are. What I would say is that I would be highly shocked if Sancho isn't nailed under Rangnick. That doesn't mean that I don't think he'll be rotated, because we've got Greenwood, Sancho, Rashford, Martial, Cavani, Ronaldo, Lingard. We've got so many options in those forward positions that he's going to see rotation. But I do think he'll be first choice right attacking mid if we play the 4-2-2, or right wing if we play a 4-3-3. The only way that I would see Sancho heavily rotated is if we switch to a 3-5-2, which Rangnick has been known to play. I just don't see that happening with the lack of quality we have in centre-back and the lack of quality we have in full-back as well. I just don't see him playing a 3-5-2. So I think Sancho will be nailed. I do think that he looks significantly better since Ollie's left. His expected goal involvement at the moment is around 0.56, so over the last sort of 2 or 3 game weeks. So I do think that Sancho could be a fantastic option. I'm going to wait 1 more week. I'll see how we actually line up with Rangnick in the dugout, and he should be in the dugout against Palace. So we'll see how he lines up. I do think he's a great option, but for me, it's 1 week too early this week, and I'll be looking at maybe from game week 16, bringing him in for Son. But I do like the option. The question 4 was, is Jota a must-have, or have we missed the boat? I don't think you've missed the boat at all. Even if Firmino comes back, he'll still play the majority of minutes, I do personally think. Then you've got AFCON coming up. He's still putting up elite underlying numbers. I don't think you've missed the boat on Jota at all. That being said, if you're bringing him in, just realise that, like a lot of players, he will be rotated at some point, and you can't be frustrated about that. And if he is rotated, he'll definitely come off the bench, so you're not going to get your bench player in for him. Similar to Man City midfielders, if you're bringing in a player from an elite club at a cheap price, you are going to see rotation at some point. But I think between now and February, I think Jota will play 90-95% of minutes. And with his underlying stats at his price, I still think he is a bargain. So he's not a must-have, but I don't think you've missed the boat at all bringing in Jota. Question 5 was just around premium strikers. There was lots of questions around this. I think it's a case of don't buy, don't sell. Hold who you have for 1 more week. Kane's got Norwich at home, great fixture. Ronaldo's got Palace, isn't a terrible fixture, and he looked really good. Vardy's got a decent fixture. I think it's Villa. I should have looked. I think they've got Villa. Decent fixture for Leicester. And then Lukaku, I wouldn't mind buying in this week against West Ham. And I do think I'm looking at potentially bringing Lukaku in for the upcoming. I just got a feeling he's going to bounce back. I know Zoff of the FPL Wire has that opinion as well. And he tends to be quite in tune with what Chelsea do as a team, and obviously he's a Chelsea fan. So I've got a sneaky suspicion that Lukaku could come back firing on all cylinders. So what I would say is just have another week to reassess. I wouldn't sell Kane, Ronaldo, Vardy, or Lukaku. I wouldn't probably be buying any of them, particularly this week. I would hold, assess next week. They've all got decent fixtures this week. And then next week, you can decide, do you want to go from Kane to Ronaldo? Do you want to go from Vardy to Ronaldo? Do you want to potentially bring in Lukaku? Do you want to downgrade all the way and only have one premium player in Salah? I think an extra week of information would be critical for these strikers here. So for me, keep who you've got, have one more week, and then reassess. If you do have Vardy and you're looking to sell for a Kane or Ronaldo, I would just go straight to Ronaldo. I just don't think Kane looks at it. There's only really one more nice fixture for Kane, and then I would probably just prefer Ronaldo long term. So if you own Vardy and you want to sell, I'd go straight to Ronaldo. Sixth and final question is, should we hold Antonio or is it time to finally sell? I would definitely be holding him. You've held him through the tricky period anyway. His stats are still decent enough. And from around game week 17, game week 18 onwards, you're definitely going to want to have Antonio in your team. The fixtures are really nice coming up. West Ham is still putting up really good attacking numbers from a team perspective. Like I said, Antonio's numbers are still pretty decent as well. And the thing I like about Antonio is at that really nice mid-price striker point where I said Bamford might come back into our thinking. Calvert-Lewin could as well. Wilson might if Eddie Howe can finally get a tune out of that Newcastle side. And worst case, you just keep Antonio if he starts to perform well. So I do think you're going to want a mid-price striker. And I think Antonio is probably the pick of the bunch at the moment, considering Bamford and Calvert-Lewin are recovering from injury. And the other strikers at that price point aren't doing anything at the time of recording this, at the time of speaking. So I would definitely be holding Antonio. I don't see anyone else that you'd want to sell him to. The only thing that might warrant a potential sale is if you go from Antonio to like a Josh King or a Dennis, as we discussed earlier on in the video. If you're desperate to use the funds elsewhere, if you're desperate to get in a Bernardo Silva or a Sancho in your midfield, or you really want to get in a Cancelo or a Trent in your defence, and using the funds to go from Antonio to a King or a Dennis might allow you to do that. In that case, I don't mind it. But for me, if I had Antonio, I would 100% be keeping him. But once again, that's just my management style. I'm pretty risk averse and pretty hit averse. So we'll just finish up with a massive thank you for the Raptor Hall of Fame, the legends that continue to support this channel through the membership feature on YouTube. If you're not sure what this is, next to the subscribe button, there is a join button that will allow you to become a member of the channel, or you can click the link in the description if you're on mobile that says, if you want to become a member, click this link here. What this does is it's essentially an opportunity for you guys to support the channel, and in return, you'll get some perks. I don't like to see it as you paying for perks. I like to see it as you want to support me and to support the channel, and in return, rather than you just giving me money, I will then give you some perks in return. So it's a bit of a win-win for everyone. What you can get as a Rap Tier 2 supporter is you can get emojis and custom badge next to your name, depending how long you've been a member of the channel. So it's just a normal Raptor logo if you're a new member, green for 1 month, blue for 2 months, bronze for 6 months, silver for 12 months, and then gold for 2 years. That's what you get as a Rap Tier 2 supporter, as well as shout outs in these videos and priority replies in comments and in live streams as well. As a Rap Tier 1 supporter, because it's more money, you get additional perks, as well as all of the things that Rap Tier 2 supporters get. You also get entered into our Rap Tier 1 mini league. You also get entered into our Rap Tier 1 group chat over on Twitter, which is absolutely amazing. Constantly chats going in there. We help each other so very much. And I'd like to say that potentially the reason that we're all doing so well, I think, again, I'm like 7th or 8th in that league because there are so many people doing so well that support this channel and are also having cracking seasons as well. So if you want to get potential badges, emojis, and custom shoutouts, become a Rap Tier 2 supporter. If you'd like to get all of that, plus being entered into our mini league, entered into our group chat, and some direct messaging with me over on Twitter, you can enter and become a Rap Tier 1 supporter. There is no obligation to do so. The content will continue to be free. I suppose what I wanted to say really is thank you to those of you that are already members. You know who you are. We talk all the time. I appreciate you so very much. You guys are the best. So guys, there you have it. That was my all-in-one game week preview team selection video answering your questions. Bit of everything. I'm not sure how long this is going to come out as, but when we've got these really tight turnarounds, it's just impossible for me to get a team selection video and a game week preview video done, but I still want to be able to answer your questions. So hopefully this is sort of a best of both. Let me know if it seemed a bit unstructured, if it was fine for you guys. I obviously appreciate you watching right to the end. You guys are the absolute best. As I said, if you're new to this channel and you've watched the entire video and you've not subscribed yet, please do consider subscribing. It helps support me so much and it's absolutely free for you to do. As I said, the other ways you can support is by buying a copy of my book or putting it on your Christmas wish list, downloading OneFootball, which is absolutely free, or potentially becoming a member of the channel as well. You can do any of those things, or you can just continue to watch, and I appreciate that very much too. I hope you guys have a fantastic game week 15. Game week 16 is a week away, so we'll be back to a little bit of normality very temporarily, because then there are midweek games once again. So hope you have a fantastic game week 15. Thank you so much for watching the content on this channel. Cheers. Bye-bye.